Good afternoon, SBAN members. Thank you so much for joining us for our first work from home SBAN webinar. Government relations team is really excited to be able to come to you all this way, and hopefully we can get you some interesting information. First of all, I wanted to introduce who's going to be talking from the GR team. Some of these folks you may or may not know. Christiana Myers runs our U.S. Small Business Engagement Program. Many of you all have spoken with her. From the federal team, we'll have Matt Jensen and Ashley Shillingsburg speak. There are U.S. federal government lobbyists. We also have Shayna Brown and Kevin Callahan, who are our state government relations leads, and they basically split the country, and they're in charge of 50 states. So they have a big job, and used to be a big traveling job, but not so much anymore. So I'll let Christiana go ahead and do some setup, but I do want to start with the fact that eBay's purpose has never been more important than it is right now. And our purpose, as you know, is to empower people and create economic opportunity. So I think that, a lot of other companies are trying to figure out how they can help out in the COVID-19 pandemic, but eBay already is set up. We are a purpose-driven company. We do not compete with our sellers. And so this has never been more important than it is today. And we want to show how much we can support sellers. I know the business is doing a lot, and the government relations team has done a lot through these various stimulus packages. So we'll talk a little bit about what GR is doing and what we plan on doing in the near future. So Christiana, I'll turn it over to you.
Perfect. So we wanted to start off kind of just to give you guys a little bit of some background information specifically on Zoom as a webinar tutorial. I know our eBay colleagues and I have definitely become very close and acquainted with Zoom as of late. But for those of you who may not be too familiar, we wanted to kind of highlight some of the features that are going to be really applicable during our webinar and make sure that you guys have a full understanding of how to use it so we can all kind of connect easily and get the most out of it. So the first thing I wanted to highlight is the polling function. We have a couple of questions where we are going to ask for you guys to give us your answer in a series of polls, some things that we are really, really interested in learning about you guys and your experience and what would best kind of help you within this time. So when we launch a poll, it'll just pop up automatically on your screen. You don't have to do anything. And then once you go ahead and you hit your answer, it'll disappear. We have about 3 polls during our presentation. So again, once you make your selection, it'll disappear until we make the next poll go live. The next function that we want to highlight is the Q&A function. So as we mentioned in our first couple communications in the invitation to this webinar, we want to give you guys a chance to go ahead and ask some questions and us to provide you with some answers. So if you notice, we cannot verbally hear you. So if you do have a question, please use the Q&A function tool that's located at the bottom of your screen. If you have problems finding it, there's a screenshot there to kind of direct you to where it is. If you are calling into the webinar and you're not actually participating online, you can also email questions directly to me. My email is chmeyers@ebay.com. So that way we can go ahead and get your questions answered, and we'll try to answer as many questions as possible. One other final little tip and trick, if for some reason you're still, having trouble hearing or anything like that, just a reminder to please make sure that mute and everything is off, that you can hear us fully. If you do have any technical difficulties or any problems like that, you can email me or use the chat function some of you already discussed. But again, other than that, in terms of questions, please use the Q&A function located at the bottom. And with that, we should be ready to go.
So we've sent this out. Hopefully you all have seen this both on Seller Hub or the community pages, and this is the eBay Main Street page for COVID-19. So you'll see the URL at the bottom. This is just government sources, both federal, all 50 states, as well as some countries, of places you can go to seek customer or support for small businesses from government organizations. This is not a page for eBay business questions or what eBay as a business is doing to help sellers. This is just help for small businesses from government sources. And we'll get into that a little bit, but I wanted you to know this is going to be a living document, living page, and it will continually be updated. So go here for interesting information that might be helpful to you. I'm gonna give it over to Matt Jensen. He's going to talk a little bit about what the business is doing. That's not the primary reason for this call, but want to just review those quickly with you.
Thanks, Sharon. Hey everyone, Matt Jensen on the Federal Government Relations team. As Sharon mentioned, this is a government relations webinar, but we thought it was important to highlight the many good actions that eBay has done in order to help support and protect you all, the sellers. So quickly, under the seller protections, we've deployed a couple of measures in order to help you all through this very weird, uncertain time, fully knowing that there are circumstances beyond your control and you shouldn't be penalized for those. So I will list these off, and then afterwards, after this webinar, we're going to send around an email with links to all of this information just in case you don't get it as we verbally communicate it. So under seller protections, first, there's been a seller fee deferment plan put in place, which will hopefully allow you a little bit more flexibility with your cash flow. The second is flexibility in your performance rating. Again, that goes to you shouldn't be penalized for circumstances or things beyond your control. And then there's been a zero insertion fee promotion, which has been deployed, which is going well. And then we are constantly in contact with the US Post and shippers, and then as we'll talk about a little bit later on, local, state, and federal elected officials in order to help represent all of your needs to those officials. With any policy or change, it's only as good as how we're able to effectively communicate it. And so, as Sharon mentioned, we have a series of different mediums that we are communicating these changes to you all. So first, on the homepage, there's the big COVID-19 banner that will link you to some of the changes that we are making. Community Hub is a really great resource. Many of you are probably using that. There's regular posts through eBay Inc. The seller teams are communicating. There's a new podcast and constantly putting more out through that, social media posts, and then the seller news landing page. So again, we are trying to communicate all of these changes to you. It's been a really interesting time with different products being put or attempted to be put on the platform. So as part of a disaster strategy policy, we have implemented and have supported a zero tolerance policy on price gouging, specific to many products that would be essential or important to combating or addressing COVID-19. So again, we'll send those links to those policies for you all. And then we have specific product restrictions. So that goes with the N95 and N100 masks, hand sanitizers, gels, disinfecting wipes. Only certain types of products can be sold, or certain sellers can sell those. And then we've seen, unfortunately, some virus kits or virus remedies that people have tried to sell, which are completely bogus. So crashing on those. And then other restrictions more recently implemented on toilet paper, baby formula, baby wipes, feminine hygiene products, and diapers. So Again, today's webinar is not about all of that. It's about government relations and what we can do to help support you to your local, state, and federal officials, but we'll send out links to all that information after the webinar. With that, as we are working with our local, state, and federal officials, it's really helpful for us in order to advocate on behalf of you all if we understand what you all need, what's working, what's not working. So Christiana is going to run us through a couple of poll questions, which will help us as we are working with elected officials.
Thanks, Matt. So yeah, guys, the first thing, as Matt kind of said, we really want to understand a little bit better how you guys are doing, what you guys need most right now, and all that kind of stuff. So the first thing we want to start off with is actually something that, you know, a little bit more positive, hopefully. We really want to understand a little bit more, you know, what's something positive that's come from this experience, whether hopefully your business has improved, you've seen a new resiliency either in yourself or your employees as a small business owner, some new innovation and creativity, whether it's in your products or how you're marketing your products or connecting with anyone, getting to know neighbors. I know for me, I have met so many people in my neighborhood that I didn't even know lived in my neighborhood, which is interesting, or even within the eBay community, more quality family time, or really just anything, you know. I hope there's something that's positive coming out of this time, and we hope that's the same for all of you all. So if you could just take a quick second to go ahead and pick which, you know, positive answer, something that's the most positive that's come out of this crazy, weird, wacky time. And we'll go ahead and move to the next one. So another thing that we really want to understand is, you know, how has COVID-19 impacted your business specifically? Whether it's a loss in sales, restrictions on the products you've been able to sell, reductions in your workforce, meaning reductions kind of in your employees or your staff or anything like that, increase in operating costs, supply chain disruption, whether that's with shipping or sourcing, getting your materials and your supplies from point A to point B. Maybe you haven't really even seen a major change too bad affecting your business due to everything that's going on, or even more different, maybe you've seen an increase in sales. I know there's, you know, been a lot of e-commerce or switches to e-commerce, which has been great, hopefully for a lot of you sellers, but we really want to, as we look to figure out the best way to support and push for government to support small businesses, we really want to understand how exactly coronavirus, COVID-19, and this environment has impacted your business particularly. So let's give you guys a couple more seconds to look into that. Great. And then the last question that we have that we really want to understand from you guys is what federal or state COVID-19 actions will most benefit your business, whether that's a direct cash payment, unemployment assistance, loan repayment flexibility, access to capital, so loans or grants or anything like that, more increased guidance on working conditions and health information, or maybe something that's not necessarily listed on one of our topics. As Matt kind of mentioned, we're going to be sending an email after this webinar with some links about how to access some of these federal or state actions, or kind of how to navigate some of them. But we'd also love if you guys could respond with any feedback on what, you know, we could be doing to help you in regards to communications with elected officials, or what you guys kind of need most right now. So I'll give you a couple more seconds to vote. Great. So again, thank you so much for sharing your feedback. You have anything else regarding any of the questions or anything that kind of relates to the questions? Again, after we send out an email, please feel free to keep in touch, respond to me personally if you need. My email is a couple places on this PowerPoint, on this presentation, and we'd love to kind of get some more information and feedback from you as well. So with that, I'm going to kick it back over to Matt and Ashley to discuss more of the federal and state actions, and I think also Kevin and Shane will be joining them.
Thanks, Christiana. This is Ashley Shillingsburg on the Federal Government Relations team. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us. It's so great connecting with everybody. I hope everyone's safe and healthy right now. Wanted to take some time to go through some of the resources that have been made available through some of the federal and state government responses to the coronavirus pandemic. Christiana, if you can move along to the next slide, please. Thank you. So what I'm going to talk about today is by no means exhaustive. We've seen the largest legislative packages pass in Congress in the history of Congress, and all agencies are engaged in the coronavirus response. So what we wanted to do was explain a little bit about what's happened already and kind of some of the levers that can be pulled at the government level, and the time that's associated with that, and then drill down into some of the specifics around small business assistance. But what we're going to be doing is, as Christiana said, we're going to be taking all of these resources and providing links and emailing them to you. And a lot of this is going to be available on our Main Street Coronavirus dedicated page. Additionally, if you have questions as I'm talking, please feel free to use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. We're going to hold questions until the end of the presentation, and then we'll go through and answer some of them. We may not have answers to everything, again, because there's just been so much response to what's been going on, but we'll certainly follow up. So again, at the federal government level, we've seen already in Congress 3 giant stimulus packages signed into law. The most recent, the CARES Act, is a $2 trillion package that includes the majority of the small business assistance that has been made available at the federal government level. You also have agencies that are directly taking action where they can without having to go to Congress. For instance, Housing and Urban Development made the announcement that federally backed mortgages would be under a moratorium for evictions and foreclosures during the span of the coronavirus crisis. So there are things that agencies that you may not think as being involved in the coronavirus crisis can do without having to go through Congress. And obviously the White House is coordinating all agency responses and coordinating everything through the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention related specifically to trying to combat the virus. So just to go through some of the agencies that are involved, again, for small business resources, the Small Business Administration is the key. They're administering all of the loans and other assistance specific to small businesses, and I'll talk about some of that in a minute. There are also regional small business development centers, which some of you may be familiar with already, that are offering counseling and phone support and virtual support right now to small businesses. Again, Housing and Urban Development has some information on federally backed mortgages. Department of Labor has some great resources on like OSHA safety and health workplace guidelines. And they're also the agency that's in charge of all of the guidance on unemployment benefits and unemployment insurance, rather, as well as a lot of the guidelines relative to how small businesses are going to be implementing new paid sick leave mandates under the new bill. Again, CDC is in charge of the response. If you have questions about personal finances, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has a lot of resources, and there's also resources there and through the FBI on a lot of the fraud and scams that have come up as a result of the coronavirus. So there's some really great resources. And you all probably saw that the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, announced that the filing and payment deadline for 2019 taxes has been deferred until July 15th. They're issuing a lot of guidance relative to individual taxes and corporate taxes as a result of the coronavirus. So that's just kind of a big picture of how all these different government agencies are involved and the things that they can do on their own, even without going through Congress. But Christiana, if you can go into the next slide. I'm going to talk a little bit about the resources that have been made available through these giant stimulus packages. First are emergency disaster loans through the Small Business Administration. These are very typically offered in any kind of emergency situation. And right now you can apply for low interest loans up to $2 million. There are also grants that are being offered in tandem with the loans. You can actually obtain a $10,000 grant within 3 days of applying for an emergency disaster loan, if that's helpful for you. There's a new Paycheck Protection Program, which is actually a forgivable loan to help cover up to 10 weeks of payroll, up to $10 million, specifically for small businesses, those with under 500 people, as well as sole proprietors and the self-employed. This is a program that's meant to help people stay employed through the pandemic. And for businesses that do maintain payroll and do not cut salaries, these loans are 100% forgivable. The maximum loan size is $10 million, and more details are coming out on how to apply to these loans. And we expect more details to be available on Friday. There are some tax incentives that were passed through the new legislation, including delay of payroll taxes and some refundable tax credits. And then there are new paid leave requirements for companies that don't fall under existing federal statutory guidelines for paid leave. There's 10 days of paid sick leave required for sick leave directly related to coronavirus. And there's also an additional 10 weeks available of paid sick leave related to, paid family leave related to coronavirus that can be used by employees if, for instance, their childcare falls through or if schools are closed. That is a requirement for businesses with under 500 employees. However, the Department of Labor is issuing exemptions, and there's going to be additional information on exemptions coming out shortly. The exemptions are most likely going to be for companies with less than 50 employees. Specific to the loans, you won't have to go to SBA or go through SBA for the majority of this financial assistance. It's going to be managed through financial institutions such as banks that you would typically go through for any kind of loan. And SBA is working to approve new financial institutions into their lending programs as we speak. So all of this information is going to be made available as it comes out, and if these are of interest to you, please let us know, and we'll be giving out information on all of this as it becomes available. Aside from all of the loan and tax incentives that were passed in this package, on the policy front, we're also working to make sure that any small business and e-commerce related policies are kept in mind at the federal government level, specifically postal policy. We're trying to make sure that there are no interruptions to postal service, which has been deemed an essential service. So we'll send some more updates on that. And you may have seen our grassroots campaign that covered a lot of these issues. Thank you so much to those who participated. You may see more in the grassroots front coming up to help influence upcoming federal legislation. So thank you, everybody. Again, leave questions below and we'll be in touch on all of this in the future.
Thank you for that overview, Ashley, on the federal level. My name is Shana Brown, and I manage state government relations in the West. So we sort of arbitrarily split up the country in half at the Mississippi River. My counterpart, Kevin Callahan, is also on the line and will be here taking questions. Christiana, can you advance the slide? Oh, excuse me, sorry, it's there. And so what we are tracking is a lot of action in a state-by-state basis. We are also seeing lots of activity at the local, county, and city level. So there's lots to keep track of here. And at the beginning of the conference line, we showed the web link where you can get information that is living. So we're going to be continuing to update this every day because more and more resources are becoming available to the states. But what you will see is that we have populated web links and resources for every state on that site so that you can best access information that is relevant to you and where you live. As you can see, there have been many actions at the state and local level, and we are also tracking legislative action in addition to executive orders that governors may make. It would be difficult for us to go through all of those for all 50 states, but we are wanting to maybe highlight a few examples, and we can see those on the next slide. For example, we differentiate actions and resources. So in California, Governor Gavin Newsom has issued an order halting eviction. So while this may not impact small businesses in particular, we do know that many of our small business owners are renters in some cases, so this can have an impact for you. And it's going to be applied in every state differently. So we, again, will make sure that these resources are available to you so you can best evaluate for yourself. Additionally, in New York, Governor Andrew Cuomo has directed the Department of Financial Services to suspend foreclosures and issue emergency rules on credit late fees. So we do see lots of banking institutions responding to these changes, and they're waiving late fees. And so there are lots of benefits that can impact small businesses here. In addition to the actions that are being taken, there are resources that are going to be made available at these state agency websites. So many states have an Office of Economic Development, and that is where some of these resources will live. Again, we are including links to each of those state offices in the COVID resources on Main Street, and so that will be there for you to access. But I also wanted to highlight a few that we are seeing. There are bridge loan programs, and many of these programs will be federal pass-through, and I think that there has been a call for more state resources, and I think that we will start to see that in the future. Additionally, North Dakota, the Department of Commerce has direct point of contact for each region in the state, and so they have contact information available and they can help you triage on a case-by-case basis. The State Government Relations Department is really working to make sure that we are tracking information in all 50 states, and we know that these states are responding in different times. You know, some states, as we saw, have a shelter-in-place order, and some haven't taken those measures yet. So it's really important to know what's going on the ground, and we can continue to help you by updating the links on our COVID resources pages.
Great. Thank you so much, Shana and Ashley, for that great information. I did want to let you know that this is going to be the first in a series of COVID-19 webinars from your government relations team. In a couple of weeks, when more of the details and logistics, if you will, of how to apply for these loans, we are going to have a speaker from the SBA and or an SBDC on, you know, how one would apply, who did these cover, tools, other resources. I think we have that listed on the next slide of sort of the categories we'll cover in the next webinar. I've actually talked to some of eBay's nonprofit partners that work in the small business space as well. These are nonprofits that do grants. I'm hoping to have someone from them on a call maybe in 2 weeks after that. So stay tuned. We are, getting information in real time, and I will give a shout out to the America's Government Relations team. They're working really hard to make sure that eBay and our micro businesses and our small businesses are represented in the government stimulus bills, and we all are. So just know that, eBay is a company that puts our customers first and people first. And of course, we'll continue to do that during this critical time. So we may not have all the answers right now, but email us, call us. Many of you have my email. There's also, Christiana's putting up her email. There's also a government relations inbox, government_relations@ebay.com. Happy to field questions. That's why we're here. So that's probably a good segue into some questions. Who is our moderator?
I am. It's Matt from the Federal Government Relations
great.
team. Thanks, Sharon. So again, just to draw your attention, at the bottom of the screen, there's the Q&A function. If you have any questions that you have not already asked, please do so. And thank you all again for taking your time to participate today. And again, for those of you that have asked questions, we've had some really good ones. So first, we'll have Ashley Shillingsburg answer this one. So we've gotten a couple of questions more about the timing on SBA, the process on receiving or applying for a grant or loan. Some of the participants had heard about the loans, but not about the $10,000 grant. Can you talk us through the timing of when that information will be available, how the sellers can receive that, and what direction we should give them? And I will say all of this without saying we're not your tax attorneys or your lawyers by any means. And so all of this is just eBay communicating outside resources. We are not providing legal consultation here. Ashley.
Yeah, that's right. We'll do our best to go through the specifics of the programs to the best of our knowledge, but we won't be able to determine, whether or not you specifically are eligible. So I'll go through what is available now. Information on these programs is coming out as we speak, and we'll be sending all of that to you as well. A lot of this is, you can simply go to sba.gov. SBA.gov. The Small Business Administration is administering all of these programs, and all of this information is in detail on their website. But on the question on loans versus grants, so the vast majority of the assistance that is being made available is in the form of loans. So for the Paycheck Protection Program, PPP, these are loans that are available to help maintain payroll. However, you can use them for other expenses such as rent, utilities, and some other costs. The loans can be forgiven if payroll is maintained, if the number of people on payroll and if salaries are maintained. So these are loans in the conventional sense, but they can effectively be thought of as grants if you do maintain payroll and comply with all of the other requirements of the program and submit for that loan to be forgiven. Additionally, the economic injury disaster loans of up to $2 million. Similarly, there's a debt relief program that SBA is administering for those loans and for other SBA administered loans. If you currently have other SBA loans, such as a micro loan or a 7A loan, they're currently forgiving debt under current loans, and up to 6 months from now, from when the package was signed into law last week, if you apply for one of these new loans, you can apply for debt relief. So these are very unconventional loans. They're very low interest, and there's potential for them to be completely forgiven. The grant that I was referring to is actually, you can think of it more as an advance cash payment if you apply for and receive one of the economic injury disaster loans. So it's not a separate grant. You don't apply for a grant versus a loan. You can get a grant through the loan. It's just a faster way of getting an influx of capital into small businesses. So that's the big picture. Again, these are, you know, we're going to be sending out more information on all of this, but these questions are really helpful. It's good to know that these resources are of interest to you also, that we can continue to convey that to federal government officials.
Absolutely. And I think from what Ashley said, right, the bill was passed and signed into law last Friday. And I think, as we all know, government doesn't move very quickly. And so they've been spending this week trying to put these programs together. So as soon as the information is available, we will share those with you. And as Sharon mentioned, we will have a follow-up webinar next week or the following week in order to address some of these process-centric questions. And there will be future stimulus packages in the next months or years, right? So a lot going on here. Next question, Shayna will be answering for us. It pertains to stay-at-home orders. How do we follow stay-at-home orders when we have to still do our job and the products that we sell help other people do their jobs?
That is a great question. Now, all of the stay-at-home orders will depend on the state or the county that you live in. But many of the states are still allowing, well, most states are still allowing essential services to continue. So the directive has been that you can continue to go to the grocery store and go to the bank and other essential services. And luckily for us, we are following guidance from the Department of Homeland Security and Infrastructure, and they include commercial facilities and transportation facilities to be essential services. And those services therefore enable warehouses and operations. So we are seeking further clarity and on e-commerce. But until we have that, we feel very confident that we can kind of operate under the CISA guidelines that I just mentioned. So that is where you would be able to continue to, take your products to ship. I know that there are a lot of, they're sometimes offering the pickup at the house. So I think that you'll have to check into those services at the local level. But we are trying to make sure that e-commerce can continue, and we are advocating for that at the state and at the federal level to make sure that there's consistency. But luckily, California was the first to utilize these guidelines, and many of the other states are following suit. So we hope that that will be consistent for all of our small businesses in all 50 states.
Perfect. Thanks, Shayna. Next question is for Christiana. So you provided the poll questions with the results. eBay's government relations team will use that information to help advocate with local, state, and federal officials on the needs of eBay sellers. Are you able to share those results?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm sure a lot of you guys are probably interested in the results. So as Matt mentioned earlier, when we set out a follow-up email kind of going over all of the links and that we discussed of how you can kind of get access to a bunch of these things, we'll include a breakdown of those polls for you guys so you can gather a sense of what other sellers in your eBay community are also going through during this time. So we'll make it available in that follow-up email that'll be sent out within the next couple of days, definitely by the end of the week though.
Perfect. We've gotten a couple of specific tax-related questions or small business loan questions, which we're going to have to answer individually once we've done a little bit more homework. So if you have asked those, we will get back to you individually. Apologize for not having that information on hand. But again, it's fairly fluid, the feedback that we're getting from IRS and SBA. And so we want to make sure we direct you to the correct information before we provide any information. So I think those are all of the questions that I have that we've received. Again, you have Christiana's email there. If you have thought of anything or think of anything after we close out, please send those questions to her and we'll make sure to follow up, and I'll send it back over to Sharon.
So I did see a couple questions, and maybe we may or may not be able to answer. Is Ashley, you said people should go talk to their local banks about a lot of the federal funding. Do you know when they should do that? Should that be something that's done right away, or will the banks even have the information yet?
There's more information on SBA.gov. I think it doesn't hurt to reach out to your local financial institutions, especially if you have a pre-existing relationship with them. But they may not have the full guidance yet from SBA, given that the bill was just signed into law last week.
Right, sure, yeah, great. Well, great. Just a couple notes. Please, if you have specific legal questions or tax questions, you might want to ask your attorney or your accountant. We can also try to help as best we can, but we are limited by the company on really what questions we can field, because we don't want to give you incorrect advice. And the other comment I wanted to just make sure everyone knows is it was recorded, and we will be posting it, and probably on one of the community pages. The COVID-19 community page would make sense, as well as Main Street. So we'll get that up right away, and we'll also follow up with you on the poll, as well as any other individual Q&As that we weren't able to field at this time. Fellow panelists, did we forget anything? I want to really thank all the participants for your patience. None of us have really done this before. We always, gather in our CAPI conference room and together and do this as a group effort, but we're all sort of separated, and I think it actually went pretty well. But thank you all for being our guinea pigs on our first one, and we look forward to seeing you at more of these when we get to do them over the next several months. And I hope everyone stays safe and keeps in touch, and let us know what else we can do for you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much. Bye.